I'll share a few of the lessons I've learned about changing the status quo in a couple of industries. First of all, what do you need to be able to disrupt an industry? And then, hopefully, what can you do to make sure that you don't become disrupted yourself? I've learned my lessons first when being part of the team that built Skype, now building TransferWise, first in telecommunication, now in the banking sector. But I'm still learning. So the story is just getting started. In 2003, there was about a dozen of us, and we were on the outskirts of Tallinn in a post-Soviet building called the Institute of Cybernetics, and that's where we launched Skype. I was 22. I can say I was still pretty stupid. I had no way to imagine where Skype could end up. But it felt like a crazy mission we were on, and we were all very inspired by it. AT&T is a huge US telecommunication company, and they were one of the many 1,000-pound gorillas that was about to be displaced if Skype became successful. There was someone high up at AT&T who, soon after Skype launched, shared a quote with the media. Let me just read it out. What Skype is doing is like a toy. They will realize they can't scale it, they don't have a brand like the AT&T brand, and they don't have the local footprint which we have. It's going to be very hard to compete with someone like AT&T. Thanks, Hossein. This, kind of became our motto. So little did they know over at AT&T about the viral growth nature that is enabled by the internet. When you don't have to lay copper wires, when you don't have to build kiosks, things move a lot faster. A month after launching, we had 1 million users. After the first quarter, it was 4 million, and 20 million by the end of the first year. Today, Skype still has 300 million people using it, but more importantly, 40% of the world's long-distance calling goes through Skype. And what about AT&T? Well, they're still around. But AT&T and others have had to go through a painful re-engineering of their business. It's far from being as profitable as it used to be. So, thinking about this, people tend to call everything a toy when it first comes around. Wikipedia was like a toy. How can a couple volunteers change and challenge what Encyclopedia Britannica has been doing for a long time? If you think about the first digital cameras, the engineers at Kodak were told to hide them because they were too embarrassed. Later on, the same happened with cameras on mobile phones. They were embarrassingly bad, and you can already see a cycle of disruption here. It kind of feels that being called a toy should be taken as a compliment when you're getting started. The other thing which people commonly say, this will never work. We heard it a lot at Skype. We've heard it a lot at TransferWise. People will not trust you. People don't want to do this online, yada, yada, yada. Today, TransferWise has more than 1 million customers, and we're transferring $1 billion on a monthly basis. So let's kind of try to decompose the toy part a little bit. There is a famous academic called Clayton Christensen who spent his life researching the theory of disruptive innovation. And if I try to summarize it, it'll go like this. Once you start out, your product is kind of around here, yet consumer expectations are already here. So inevitably, it looks like a toy. It doesn't do much good. But thinking about the nature of technological advancement, very quickly you go from here to here to here to here, and soon you'll have a product which is 10 times better than what the consumers are expecting. That was very true for Skype. When we first launched, computers weren't powerful enough yet. Broadband wasn't available, and computers didn't even come with microphones. But if you believe that computers will get faster, if you believe that broadband will be available to everyone in their pocket, and if you believe that computers will come with microphones, then it's not too hard to see how this will go from a toy to being a Swiss Army knife. Similar about TransferWise, it was easy to dismiss it at first. How will you win the trust of consumers, et cetera, et cetera. If we think about that's a banking business, if we believe that the banking business model is being challenged and instead of focusing on branches and brick and mortar, the most important bank branch now is the one in your pocket, in your phone. You think about that trust, which first started eroding with the global financial crisis, will continue being eroded from banks. It's not hard to see that maybe this toy will grow up to be a big toy, and maybe this toy will turn into a Swiss Army knife as well. So what is it about TransferWise and banking? What is it about Skype that allows you to change these industries? And the same is happening in many other places. What we're speaking previously about Hyperloop, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. Uber and Tesla are disrupting cars and transportation. Spotify is disrupting music. And if you think about disruptive innovation that will be applied in the future to healthcare, to education, there's a lot of exciting things that will come from it. But how do you go from an idea to disrupting an entire industry? So I've thought about it ever since being involved with Skype and starting TransferWise, and I've realized that it comes down to a few simple things, like most things in life. It starts with solving a real problem in a big market, then doing that with a product which is 10 times better, and last, just being pretty quick at doing it. Let's look into it. Real problems have a real sense of democratization around it. You'll take something which was previously available only to the chosen few, and you make it available to everyone. That creates huge opportunities. You think about communication, allowing anyone to talk to anyone around the world creates massive opportunity for people. Was there a real problem in banking? Hell yes. If we look at it, it was very painful, still is painful, to use banks. Banks steal a chunk of your money. It's distraction, emotional, and financial drain, which can be directed into something much more practical and usable. It helps to do this in a big market. Why? Well, first of all, you can have much more impact this way. But also, besides this, big markets create conditions where large incumbents can evolve. And large incumbents become big, and then they become lazy, and then they kind of set themselves up for failure in the future. Should you be afraid of attacking the incumbents? Absolutely not, because the incumbents have oftentimes become stuck. Eventually, they will start paying attention to you when you step on their toes enough. But even then, they have few choices what they can do. They're addicted to the revenue and profits they make, so they can't offer a disruptive product at a lower price point. Oftentimes they will turn to governments and lobbying. We've heard it with TransferWise, how people are lobbying that it's not safe to do this online, and so on and so on. I remember a story from Skype, and we were having a little bit of trouble in a certain Middle Eastern country. The governments are not as democratic as we're used to, and the government owns a local telco. And obviously, Skype was starting to threaten the profits of the local telco. So we engaged with the government, we tried to explain why this is good and so on, but they were threatening us, and they ended up blocking Skype, so people couldn't use Skype in that country. At the end of one of the meetings we had with them, after the meetings they tell us, hey guys, the video calling feature just launched is really cool. And we're like, hey, wait a minute, how do you know? And then they said, everyone that's a regulator has a VPN. We all use Skype to call our families. Even they knew what the future looks like. So you've identified a big problem. You've done it in a big market. So next up, you need a product which is 10 times better to be able to solve the problem. You don't need to be 10 times better everywhere. It's hard to be 10 times more trusty, 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper. But in some aspect, you have to be a lot better, and over time you'll catch up. Being 10 times better means you don't have to worry that much about marketing. Your product will market itself. Convincing customers to switch becomes really easy. The main thing to worry about is you have to keep on investing in your 10x advantage. Because over time it will erode. So you need to know what it is and you need to keep on doubling down on it. At Skype, one of the advantages for us became quality and having this crystal clear connection. So we built our own team of scientists around the world to develop our own audio-video codecs. That's a little piece of software which takes a voice from a microphone and turns it into bits and bytes. At TransferWise, for us, speed and cost are important, so we're building our own network globally to connect into the local banking system. That's the only way we can do things very quickly and for a low cost. Today, you can send money from Australia to UK instantaneously, quicker than the speed of sound. Boom. And then lastly, it's about doing this really quickly. There is Silicon Valley saying that done is better than perfect. And it's so true today. You know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, not so true, but it's becoming ever more true. The world around you is constantly changing and evolving. So if you don't do something, somebody else will do it for you. Someone else will come and eat your lunch. And you have to think about speed on a kind of two-dimensional axis. It's about the speed of innovation, the speed at which you improve your product, and then the speed at which you roll it out across the world. If we think about Skype, then Skype can actually really say that we've failed. While a spectacular success in many ways, Skype on mobile didn't happen quick enough, and now many of us are using FaceTime, using WhatsApp instead. At TransferWise, we've taken speed really into consideration, and we thought about it in the way we design our organization. We do work in small, empowered teams which have everything they need to be able to deliver. So we free them from the bureaucracy and slowness which tends to happen. So you start a business being hungry and foolish and a bit naive. That's all required. But oftentimes, more often than not, in the end, you end up being disrupted yourself. That happened to Skype. Who here has a Nokia phone? Nokia had half of the world's mobile phones at one point. I think they even invented the smartphone. Maybe also Dropbox, once invented easy file sharing, was once supposed to be the next big consumer company. Doesn't look like it's happening. What do you need to be able to avoid this? So as soon as you solve the puzzle and you become the disruptor, you very quickly need to start thinking about how do you stay in this coveted position. And I think you're really prone to falling off from this chair for three reasons. It's about greed, forgetting about your customers, and forgetting where you came from. As you're building a disruptor, you need to, and you will over time get increasingly better at monetization. Some companies charge a subscription fee, some companies charge a fee per use. Whatever it is, that's all legit. And it's also needed because in order to build a company which will last a lifetime, you need to be financially successful. But where it gets tricky is when you start going on a slippery slope of prioritizing profits over user experience. Next up, it's about customers. So your customers are providing you a northern light. You have to focus on what jobs are you doing for your customers. So they won't tell you where your next innovation comes from, but they'll guide you in your day-to-day activities. So train your ear and your organization to listen to that. And last is about remembering where you came from. So you started out with a dream to build a business. You ended up asking lots of what-if questions, and that curiosity drove you. Then you had impact which kept you on going. You need to retain this risk and curiosity because you need to take even bigger and bigger risks to be able to have the impact you need. So lastly, as you start a business with thinking about the what-ifs, it's the dream that keeps you going. Neither Skype or TransferWise got started with having a financial goal. We didn't dream of an IPO or selling the business. We didn't even think about having a business as such at all. How to change the world, how can we change the world, was the question we thought about first when waking up and last before going to bed. I think that's the only mindset that you can build an industry disruptor. So ask yourself, are you building just a business, or do you want to change the world? Thanks.